Welcome to another episode of the Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. And the idea of the soul of business. Those of you that are regular listeners, you've heard me kind of go on and on about, why this show, kind of what the theme is and whatnot. And a lot of it revolves around just the nature of connection. Um, yeah, I tend to be more of a panpsychologist or a panphysiologist or a panpsychot. In terms of my view in the world here, that everything is informed by a soul in some way, shape, or form. Even the rock in my garden has got a soul attached to it in some way, shape, or form that expresses itself through the form of that rock. Now, whether you believe that or not is irrelevant. If we act as if everything is connected, things start to take on a very interesting hue in terms of how we operate as businesses, how we operate as business owners, and employees. This idea of being able to hold that notion that it's all connected in some way, shape, or form begins to speak to me in very interesting ways. And it's kind of the pursuit of the unity of opposites, if you will, because obviously as a business, we want to make money. We need to make money if we're going to stay in business. But there's also this mission that we have as a company, as a business, that was kind of the genesis of what we started out to do. We had a product or a service offering that we wanted to bring to market, and the intent was, let's do some good with that, that mission. So it's not an either or, it's an and. How do we hold both of these sometimes conflicting positions in a healthy way? And as we start looking at what's going on in the world today, there's not just starting, but there's change is increasingly rapid in terms of its pace. And the consequence of that is pretty profound in a lot of ways, not because of the change itself, but because of the disruption to existing relationships that change causes. And as we look at globalization, as we look at being able to access a workforce off of our home country's soil as a point of view here, things open up. Possibilities that didn't exist before begin to emerge. So, with that as a preface, my guest today, Andy Hillard, is the CEO of a company called Accelerance. And they work specifically in terms of globally distributed teams. And he's got an interesting background that I want to bring into the forefront as a way of informing some of the conversation that we'll have here. He's also got a book that I'm going to, for those of you that are watching this as a video, Synergia, a blueprint for building effective globally distributed teams in the new era of software development. But it goes beyond software development. I mean, there's just a lot of things that come into play here that I wanted to have Andy on the show to talk about, because again, I'm going to go full circle. Everything is connected in some way, shape, or form here. And if I can find a way to understand, number one, but number two, begin to leverage that, I'm going to be putting myself and my company in a very interesting competitive position that is going to be difficult to replicate with my competitors. So that preamble kind of sets the stage here. So Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Blaine. How do you be here?
Well, it's a treat to have you here. When your publicist sent an email to me saying, here's a guy that you might want to consider, I started looking at both the company, but also some of your background, and the time that you spent in the Peace Corps, some of the formative things, and begin to inform how you actually do business, how you actually not making an assumption here, but how you live life come into play here. So I think what I'd like to do, instead of going to my typical question of when you hear the term the soul of business, what does that evoke? What I'd really like to do, I think, is just begin by having you give a little bit about your background, so the listeners can kind of get a sense of who is speaking as we start digging into some of this stuff.
Well, to fast forward, I was born and raised in Northern California. At around 25 years of age, I was somewhat disillusioned with the thought of spending the next 50 years doing a profession that I really felt lacked meaning at the time. You know, coming out of school, you just basically get a job and you sort of figure things out, as we all do. And just like anyone else, I was trying to figure things out, and what really interested me, attracted me, and some early examples of international travel really sparked my interest of different cultures and how people communicate and collaborate and work together, what some of the barriers are. Obviously, language. Pre-internet, we didn't have instantaneous translation, and we did a lot of sign language. But then you start thinking, wow, only 4% of the world lives in the United States. 4%. That's the other 96% live. And
Who's that
just
there?
fast forward all the way to 2024. Only 15% of software developers live in the United States. That means 85% are outside the United States. But I get ahead of myself. So anyway, I sort of had this quarter life crisis. A friend of mine suggested joining the Peace Corps. I just thought it merged my embryonic interest in international cultures and travel. It made a commitment to myself to learn something. It's a 3-year commitment, right? So, I mean, you're not just down there on a vacation. You're not a consultant that just throws money at a problem and then leaves. You're there to, build relationships, to build trust, to build community, to be part of the fabric of your host country nationals. And really interestingly, there's 3 goals of the Peace Corps. And the third goal is to deliver the knowledge transfer of your particular subject matter expertise. In my case, it was economic development for small businesses, helping them organize, build objectives, understand their P&L, understand what drives their business and how they could compete. But the first 2 objectives of the Peace Corps is to gain trust, to understand and appreciate the cultures and the mores and the values of the host country people who are hosting you for those 3 years, and then to bring that knowledge, that real information back and share it with people. Not get the media and glossed, perceptions or the biases and all that, but speak, with firsthand knowledge. That's the first goal. The second goal is to do the same with the American culture, is to deliver an actual representation of the American culture. For example, in Costa Rica, where I was back in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of Contras and Sandinistas. And are you CIA? Are you communist? Are you a spy? It's like, no, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. And you may not believe that today, but over time you will. Because I'm here to live and to work alongside of you to become friends. And sure enough, you build trust and community and friendships. So that has really driven everything in my professional life all the way up to now, as far as what it takes to effectively work with people of all shapes and sizes and locations, whether it's Northern California or Michigan or up in Seattle or across the world. It's about appreciation, understanding, communication, building trust. And from trust, it cascades into the ability to work together.
I'm fond of saying that all any organization is a collection of people that are in relationship. That's all yeah. And if the relationships are working pretty good, you got a pretty good shot of being successful. And the most obvious is the interpersonal relationships, but you talk about some of these other subjective attributes. I have a relationship with trust. I have a relationship with culture. I have a relationship with mores. All of these things have cultural not cultural, relational dynamics associated with them. And I want to move this into the evolution of outsourcing, software specifically, but outsourcing in general. That notion of relationships. I led a significant portion of Nokia's global leadership development initiatives and processes beginning in the 1990s, late 1990s, up through the 2000s. And I worked with them for about 12, a little bit more than 12 years in that capacity as an external consultant. And we were one of the first, as far as I can tell, one of the first leadership developmental um, initiatives to begin looking at how we deliberately put together high performing remote teams. And I remember reaching out to some seminal authors at the time that were looking at the nature of distributed work and that sort of thing. And we were working with people in China, in Finland, in the U.S., in Spain, in Turkey, none of whom necessarily spoke English as a native language. They all spoke a different language. We used English as the working language. So as you can imagine, and this was back in the late 1990s, so we didn't have Zoom. Yeah, yeah, it was a very interesting proposition in terms of how we actually got work done. Um, so take a snapshot there, take a snapshot today. Big changes in terms of process, in terms of relational experience, all that kind of stuff. What have you noticed? I mean, I've got my own, just very isolated firsthand experience with doing something around this. But in your career and in with the work that Accelerance does, what are some of the evolutionary milestones that you've observed in the outsourcing process as you start putting together high performing multicultural, multinational teams?
Yeah. So, couple of threads here. First and foremost is, the concept of outsourcing really began. It probably began hundreds of years ago, but the true capitalistic commercial accelerated evolution of outsourcing really began in the concept of like product outsourcing, where you would have it was very transactional. You had requirements and specs, and they were sent to a lower cost destination like China to build, I always use the thing wicker chairs. I don't know why I say wicker chairs, but it's a thing. It's a thing where it doesn't really require a lot of interaction, if at all. And there's a process and there's standards and there's QA, but there's really no art to it other than iterations and then just get the product from point A to point B. And the American culture in general that has really we've become even more transactional because we have applications between us and something else, and we can just interface with an application because it streamlines things and makes things simpler.
Yeah.
But it also makes us extremely lazy, especially when what you're trying to accomplish requires human interaction, creativity, understanding, and appreciation. So for our audience here, the conversation today is around those type of services. And in my world, it's software and product development services where you have teams of developers at different seniorities. You have project managers, you have interface designers, you have QA people, you have architects, you have product owners, you have product managers, you have a confluence, you have a team, and this team needs to coordinate and collaborate and synergize, which is part of Synergia. And the evolution that has taken place is, we started realizing that there's great talent everywhere. I myself, read two seminal books. One is The Competitive Advantage of Nations. Michael Porter put that out. Probably even today, if you go to an MBA, you probably read that book. The other one is The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman, which, both these books talk about, one, there's great talent everywhere. And there are certain geographic or country-specific advantages based on the kind of people, the kind of talent, what their skill sets are, and such. And so once people started realizing that, and that they could get a competitive advantage in the marketplace by leveraging all of this talent worldwide, and getting certain hyper specialized skills or lower cost skills to deliver a better product faster to the marketplace, beat your competition, and reap the rewards. Um, then it was about, well, how do we find these people? How do we organize these people? How do we partner with companies that can get us along that evolutionary path faster, scale faster? And so that's when Accelerance, when I founded Accelerance back in 2001, we were primarily talking about thought leadership and great talent everywhere. But then we thought, well, people need to galvanize this and turn it into execution. How do we facilitate them finding the right partners or the right mix of people? And thus, Accelerance was born. But of course, over the next 10 or 15 years, like I said before, technology starts to try to solve that problem in an automated fashion.
Yeah.
So everyone, if there's a massive marketplace, someone's going to come up with platforms or ways in which you can automate things, which again exacerbates this whole automation. It's like I need to choose a widget. Like, oh, well, I call widgets humans. I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of I understand the concept, but that's kind of a bad thing too. Because if you're asking these widgets to do artful type of work, well, those are two different things. You're not building an engine or a wicker chair. You're building a collaborative software. So unfortunately, what has happened over the last 3 or 4 years is people have been forced to work remotely, and we have these great tools like Zoom and various other collaborative tools that can distribute work, measure work, even iterate, coordinate, combine, deliver. But the gap in the marketplace is that okay, you can find people, you can find teams, but how are you going to build an ecosystem that is building synergy, trust, collaboration, cooperation, commitment, accountability? You can solve some of these things through tools, of course, to facilitate. But in order for you to really build a high functioning team, you need to have very high emotional IQ. You can't outsource that to a application.
Right.
An application is a facilitator, or like AI they call it co-pilot. So people are like, well, I don't want a co-pilot. I want them to do everything so I could sit and watch TV. But no, it requires human interaction, and it requires you leading things. And that's really the biggest, latest evolution, is this fight with wanting to automate things, but at the same time, using this human EQ in order to build the best, highest functioning team possible to compete and win in the marketplace. Two things pulling us
Two
in
things.
different directions.
Yeah, and it kind of strikes me as you're talking that there's a distinct miss, I guess I would say here, that a lot of the mindset about offshoring, as an example here, has to do with, and to your point, the wicker chair analogy here, it's a transactional move. Yeah, I'm going to move offshore. There's a transaction involved. Yeah, and I want something coming back that I don't have to, do a whole lot of effort in, assuming or assuaging my concern about the qualitative nature of it or anything else, as opposed to a collaborative interaction. Yeah, and it's the distinction between transactional and relational.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm hearing in your description here is that one of the major shifts that has occurred, that is occurring, could be, I'm not saying it has been, but could be a beginning emergence of a realization that relational conversations need to be in the forefront of the transactional output. Would that be a fair assessment on my part?
Well, certainly in the forefront, but there is required ongoing continual improvement, and just like any maintenance, care, and enhancement of the relationship over time. There is no escaping that tools make us more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to put forth the same amount of effort in different ways in order to be competitive in the marketplace. There's just
Yeah.
no way about it. There's no way to just ref because tools are commoditized. Anyone can use them. They're universally available, but they don't differentiate. The thing
Right.
that differentiates is having a team that is um, more synergistic, more efficient, more effective, lower turnover, a greater sort of cultural commitment and awareness to the goals of the team, of the entity. We're all about breaking down those barriers, those labels of country, location, city, metro, culture, language, eliminating those because those are just constructs that separate us and define us. And in certain instances, definition is good. You need some sort of definition of who is who and what they're doing, what their role is, and what their title is, sort of like that. But you don't need labels that break down this into transactional bits.
You know, when we look at it through that lens, I mean, and you said something here that I think is worth marking out. The maintenance, care, and enhancement of the existing relationships or the emerging relationships. It's not a one and done. I signed the contract and now we're ready to go. That's
Yeah.
just the beginning. And the qualitative nature of the ensuing conversations, I think, begin to rear an interesting head, if you will. They could take us in a couple of different directions. If I'm looking for differences, to your point, I'm going to probably go off the rails at some point in time. If I'm looking for similarities, which has to do with collaboration, I'm probably going to find ways to maintain and enhance the quality of the relationship. Easy to say in my experience, difficult to do, particularly if we're doing it through different language pattern or literally through different languages where an interpreter might be in play, that sort of thing. All of that being said, if I can crack the code on it, what are some of the upside benefits to effectively offshoring a lot of this developmental work, if you will? Because, like you said, only 4% of the population is, yeah, of the world lives in the U.S., and only 15% of the software developers live in the world. So, yeah, I'm missing a huge opportunity if I'm not leveraging that.
So if leaders start looking at this as an ecosystem and not just an outsourced transaction,
Mhm.
and they start acting in more of a sort of a servant leadership capacity, saying, "I have these people. I'm investing in these people. These people are distributed everywhere." Um, the more effective is these people congregate, galvanize, and work as a team. The happier they're going to be intrinsically and extrinsically because they have a place to go and work and do what they love to do with people they love to work with. They feel like they're producing their best work in the role that they've been assigned to. Um, and the effect of like turnover and satisfaction and commitment and sort of this team understanding of what the goals are, working collaboratively as a team, that brings a lot of satisfaction to the individual. That leader that promotes that is going to reap the benefits of a team that is more cohesive, that is more accountable, that is all singing from the same page in a more continuous fashion over a longer period of time. And that team is going to far outperform other teams that are fractionalized, distributed, working in isolation, with a lot of turnover.
Mhm.
So all of those come at a cost. I unfortunately we have a lot of clients that come to us and they believe the end in mind is to find talent, capacity quickly that saves them money from a rate card. And they really push back. It's like, I don't really want to travel to visit them. I just want to get this done. I'm like, well, finding the widgets, as you seem to be referring to these people as, and throwing requirements or tasks over the wall Um, it, it it'll get you a very short honeymoon of feeling like you've accomplished something. You've taken a basis of 100 and now you're paying 60 points on that. So you're saving 40%. Um,
Sure.
until yeah, until that person becomes dissatisfied, they leave because someone else is paying them 61 cents as opposed to 60 cents. They're never committed to the goals, the organization. They don't identify with the team. I mean, these are human beings. They're intrinsically motivated as well as extrinsically. And if you ignore one versus the other, you're going to lose the person. And you want to talk about a cost. When you transfer knowledge over a certain period of time and then you lose that entire investment because you're not building this culture, this team environment. You're showing that you're not caring about that person's well-being and getting them to be the best version of themselves. Well, then you're just going to reap the penalties.
And it's a steep penalty. When
Yeah,
we come back, we're going to take a we're going to, easy for me to say, a real quick break here. I want to talk about Synergia, and not just from the standpoint of where'd you get the title, where'd the name come from. But in the book itself, you've got a blueprint for building an effective, globally distributed workforce. I want to unbundle that a little bit and leave our listeners with a bit of a understanding of what practically they can do to begin this journey outside of going out and buying your book, which I want them to do. Okay.
sure.
So, folks, we're going to take a real quick break and we'll be right back speaking with Andy Hillard, CEO of a firm called Accelerance. And that embedded in that is some very interesting meaning as well. So, we'll be right back. The nature of life is evidenced in nature. Nature grows, and all of nature honors the desire to be more, to have more, and to do more. Life thrives when it's allowed to grow. And ideally, thriving is what we also, all of us, want to be able to do. Unfortunately, at some stage in life, most people find themselves settling into what I can only call a rut. And a rut is nothing more than a coffin with the ends kicked out. You want to quickly get out of any rut that you find yourself in. When you stop growing, that's when the coffin starts to appear. The simple truth is this, and this is true for everything in nature. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Every one of us dies. So the question we need to come to grips with is not, are we going to die? The question nature asks us to answer is, are we truly living? That's what motivation is about. It's the desire to move. It's the desire to grow and to excel. Have I lived? How have I lived? I'd love for you to take advantage of my Leadership Mindset Masterclass. It's all about providing you with the tools to ensure thriving for yourself and for those around you. Register today to receive the free introduction video and find out more about this acclaimed program. You'll also receive a copy of my international #1 bestseller, Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business. I'm Blaine Bartlett, and I look forward to helping you thrive. Welcome back. And before we took the break, I had mentioned to Andy that I wanted to talk about his newest book, Synergia. I'm going to just hold this up again. For those of you that are watching this, here's what the jacket looks like, and here's what the book is headlined for. For those of you that aren't watching this, this is an encouragement to go to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast on the YouTube channel, and you'll get all of the tasty treats that are visually available. Yeah. So first of all, just a very simple question: where did the title come from? Interesting title.
Well, yeah, it's a mashup between the words synergy and Pangea. And if everyone remembers some point in probably middle school that they heard about Pangea, when all the continents were one, effectively there were no borders, there were actually no people. So people are the or the ingredients that started to create these borders and differentiation and fiefdoms and then, political structures. And I want people to come away thinking that this is a team exercise. It's art and science where people need to collaborate. People from all over the world can collaborate as effectively now by not only, a mandate of possibility post pandemic. Here you and I are, Blaine, communicating effectively, having a conversation like we're together. But also, removing these artificial labels of separation and taking advantage of this global talent workplace, but doing it in a way that just removes all these barriers to equality. Um, and I know for a lot of people, it's something that is not, I don't want to say natural, but there's a certain, we're conditioned to want to be unique and to
Mhm.
separate. And we're in this technology filled world. We're also fooled into thinking that technology and tools can replace the effort it requires to interact and to collaborate with people. But if you're in a collaborative world where the best collaborative people produce the best work, then there's no way around it.
You have to find a way to do it, which goes directly into you've got a blueprint for how to do this. Just at a high level, can you talk a little bit about what your work is organized around and actually what this blueprint actually lays out for people?
Sure. So first and foremost, think of this value creation machine like anything else. It has a beginning, a middle, and end, and it has like an engine. And um, think of talent as the input. It's the starting point. Finding great talent. Well, how do you find great talent? Well, there's many ways to do it. There's many platforms to do it, or you can go to organizations like Accelerance. We travel the world and we assess software development organizations, of which, by the way, there's about 30,000 software development firms around the world. It's an enormous amount. Three
Wow, I
years
had no
ago,
idea.
yeah, 3 years ago there were only 8,000, but today there are 30. Why is that? It's because you can turn on an organization online, especially overnight. You can create a website. You can say you do everything on the planet. You can say you have 1,000 people, even though you may have zero, but you have access to 1,000. You have access to millions, actually. So there's just this tremendous amount of smoke and mirrors out there. You can find contractors, of course, through Upwork or TopTal or these various things. That doesn't solve the scaling problem because they're one-offs, they're individual contractors.
Mhm.
Or you can find ways to find these organizations, conduct your own due diligence and vet them, or utilize organizations like Accelerance, who again travels the world and assesses these organizations in their countries, in their regions, and then determines their viability to serve this marketplace, like the United States marketplace. That's the first thing. The other thing is uh, helping to create the engine, because the input being the talent, the scalable talent, doesn't equate to anything unless you can create an ecosystem that is conducive for building highly effective teams. And that's a lot about what we've been talking about, Blaine. And it's about the EQ required for stakeholders and leaders, the investment that is required, what kind of an investment, what tangible investment. Some of it's travel, some of it is creating an ecosystem where there is equality and people are treated as equals, not as contractors or outsiders or Filipinos or Ukrainians or wherever they happen to be. And building an ecosystem that has common values, common goals, accountability, a structure for sort of team dynamics and what is expected of people. How are people brought in? What do they need to bring? What are they expected to deliver? How are they expected to communicate? and essentially just eliminate all of these different transactional labels
Yeah.
and barriers. So, um, so essentially that's broken into sort of the onboarding, the communication, and the accountability systems. Plus, radical candor, commitment, accountability, and execution. So those five, key
Those
steps.
five, yeah, which is, I think, a very easy, digestible way of looking at how I can go about setting this up. Yeah, if I happen to be in this space, and it's not just around software development. My guess is here because as I'm listening, this I've got a client that I've been working with in Asia for a number of years, and as you talk about this, these are some of the things that I put in place here as part of my CRM. Yeah, just how do I manage this client relationship? Uh, this is not just a tech specific sort of a thing, and 90 plus percent of my business is offshore. And I say my business, our business as a firm is offshore. So we have to be facile. We have to be able to work with these different clients as well as the suppliers that we interact with in these different countries. So,
Well, Blaine,
folks,
people
go
people
ahead.
start with this like, my problem is solved if I find quote unquote the right talent at the right price. I'm thinking, no, I mean,
Uh,
you're starting in the wrong place. You have to start in the engine, the ecosystem.
yeah.
Because if you have a really good ecosystem of this trust and radical candor and commitment and accountability, then you can really aggressively go out and find the hyper specialized expert. And you're gonna be able to plug them in, and that person's going to be it's his or her most productive they can be for the longest period of time. But taking that person, if you happen to find that person, and plugging them into a dysfunctional system, you're going to
Oh,
get very little out of them, and they're only going to last a little time. And then the massive cost of having to do that all over again and repeat the same problem over and over and over again, and then to walk around saying outsourcing doesn't work. Like, you're just approaching it so wrong.
let's go. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah, the old aphorism of garbage in, garbage out. I mean, really does
Yeah,
apply. It really
really.
does. Yeah, I have to be not just intelligent because it's not about intelligence. It's about being able to understand the dynamic of the relational, not the transactional dynamic. And those are two different beasts. Those are two different complete animals that I have to, the care and feeding of my relational animal is different than the care and feeding of my transactional animal.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Where can people find out more about Accelerance and about you? The book obviously will be available, I'm assuming, on all of the regular places, Amazon and whatnot. But
Well, Blaine, I'm super fortunate that this isn't just a job. It's not just a business, but as I told you from the very beginning, it really ties me back into Peace Corps and what that meant and how impactful that was. And it's really a mission for me. So I'll talk to almost anyone. I really believe in the effects it has in building trust across borders.
yeah,
And I believe that, down to my very soul. They can reach me at accelerance.com, Andy at accelerance.com. I'm, LinkedIn, pretty
yeah,
much,
all the
around the
good
internet.
places.
All over the place. You can't miss me, I'm sure.
Okay, we'll have all of that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Folks, we've been talking to Andy Hilliard, CEO of Accelerance. Check him out. But more than checking out the company, I do invite you to pick up a copy of his book, Synergia. That's a blueprint for building effective globally distributed teams in the new era of software development. And don't just be put off by the title software development. It actually is a far more generic treatment than just software development. It truly is. Having not diligently read the book, I've thumbed through it and I'm going, ooh, I can use this here. Ooh, I can use that there. So, yeah, pick a copy up and you'll be glad you did. As always, find a way in your life to be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. I think you'll find the world works for you a whole lot better, when you're actually moving from that platform. Andy, thanks again for being such a great guest. I've loved having you on the show.